Since its formation nearly 60 years ago, the Black Panther Party has been both reviled and revered, but most of all, they've been profoundly misunderstood. Throughout their existence, they've been labeled as anti-American, anti-white, and even, in certain cases, anti-civil rights. The FBI intentionally spread false information about the group, which eventually led to an outright attack on the organization through assassination plots, criminalization, and incarceration of its leaders.
So, were they really as bad as they've been made out to be? Or is there more to the story?
Yeah.
Today, we're going to separate fact from fiction and explore the complexities of their ideology as we delve into some little-known facts about the Black Panther Party. Join us as we examine the good, the bad, and the misunderstood about this pivotal organization in American history.
Welcome back to our channel. I'm Hass.
I'm Cece.
Today we got a hot topic for you. J. Edgar Hoover wrote a memo to fellow FBI agents in which he stated, "The Black Panther Party represents the greatest threat to the internal security of the country." The memo goes on to say, "Leaders and representatives of the Black Panther Party travel extensively all over the United States, preaching their gospel of hate and violence, not only to ghetto residents, but to students in colleges, universities, and high schools as well." At its height, the Black Panthers had just over 5,000 members, and in the beginning, the organization was made up largely of college students, and their numbers starting out were probably only in the hundreds.
So, why was the FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover so concerned about this small group of radical black college students? Was it that they were black and armed? Maybe. That was part of it, I'm sure. But if you look close, there was something else about this group that frightened the U.S. government to its core. It was the Black Panthers' ability to organize. More importantly, their ability to organize across class and color lines. It was a strategy that challenged the very foundations of a capitalist American society. And it was working.
The Black Panthers were founded by college students Bobby Seale and Dr. Huey P. Newton. Seale was a 25-year-old Air Force veteran who grew up in Oakland, California. Huey Newton was a 19-year-old college student at Merritt College. Both were sons of the Second Great Migration and born to families that moved from north to the west in the Bay Area in pursuit of overlapping American and California dreams. Seale's family had come from struggle in Liberty, Texas. This by way of more struggle in Dallas, San Antonio, and Port Arthur. The Newtons had escaped Washita Parish in northern Louisiana, where between 1877 and 1950, there were many lynchings. Washita ranked 5th among the hundreds of counties in the American South for the murder of black men and women. Seale and Newton had previously met in 1961 at an Afro-American Association, which was a black nationalist study group based on the nearby University of California campus in Berkeley.
However, it was not until a protest against President John F. Kennedy's 1962 naval blockade of Cuba that the two actually connected, and from there, the seeds of the Black Panther Party were planted.
On September 27, 1966, a police officer shot Matthew Johnson in the back, and he was an unarmed 16-year-old that lived in San Francisco's Hunter Point neighborhood. And it sparked violent unrest for several days. And after Matthew Johnson's death, the pair decided to put that vision of a new politics into action. So in October 1966, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense was officially formed. They decided the only way to address police brutality was to monitor the authorities. So Dr. Newton read up on California's open carry laws, and within weeks, the Black Panthers had armed men patrolling the streets of Oakland. And if they saw an arrest, they would approach with their firearms visible and inform the suspects of their rights. And the practice came to be known as cop-watching.
When we first started, we had a police alert patrol, and we would patrol the community. If we saw the police brutalizing anyone, we put an end to this. Usually the police wouldn't brutalize anyone if we were on hand because we were armed.
The Black Panthers often referred to the police as pigs and described them as an occupying force.
In America, black people are treated very much as the Vietnamese people or any other colonized people because we're brutalized. The police in our community occupy area. Our community as a foreign troop occupies territory.
They were able to bridge the connection between how the Vietnamese people were being oppressed during the war with how the U.S. government was using police to oppress black people in America. What was happening in Vietnam was directly analogous to what was happening to black folks in the United States.
And the police are there not to promote our welfare or for our security and our safety, but they're there to contain us, to brutalize us and murder us, just as the soldiers in Vietnam have their orders to destroy the Vietnamese people.
There were self-identified Marxists who believed in class struggle as the right for black people and other oppressed people to organize and form their own institutions.
Everybody knows that all the people don't have liberties, all the people don't have freedom, and all the people don't have power, so that means none of us do.
One of the Black Panthers' fundamental concerns was for social justice and economic equality for all people. In fact, their mantra or war call was all power to all people.
All power to all people. We say white power to white people. Brown power to brown people. Yellow power to yellow people. Black power to black people. X power to those that we left out.
Holding fast to the ideology of all power to all people, the Black Panthers didn't just organize in the black community, but they also leaned into coalition politics based on anti-capitalism and anti-imperialism.
The Black Panthers went on to form alliances with various other organizations that were fighting for the rights of oppressed people, such as the Red Guard Party, which was a Chinese-American youth radical group, and the Brown Berets, who were a kind of radical Chicano leftist and communist group. And in an era where open anti-gay and anti-queer sentiment was common, the Black Panther Party, in contrast to many other radical organizations of that period, they had explicit alliances with both feminists and what were at that time called gay radical organizations.
Homosexuals are human beings, and they're oppressed because of the bourgeois mentality that tries to legislate sexual activity. I don't think that the homosexuals should be harassed and badgered and brutalized because of their desire to have a sexual relationship that's not popular at this time.
Additionally, the Black Panthers had an alliance with a group of white Appalachians who flew the Confederate flag. Yep, let me say that again. The group flew the Confederate flag. They were called the Young Patriot Association.
When the man walks up and says that we were anti-white, he says, well, I mean, you hate white people. I say, me? Hate a white person? That's your game. That's the Ku Klux Klan's game. I say, I wouldn't murder a person or brutalize because of color skin. I say, yeah, we hate something, all right. We hate the oppression that we live in. We hate cops beating black people over their heads and murdering them. That's what we hate.
Because of this willingness to cross color and class lines, the Black Panthers drew widespread support from urban centers with large minority communities, including Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, and Philadelphia. By 1968, as previously stated, at its height, the Black Panthers had roughly 5,000 members across the country.
Although the Black Panthers' early initiatives primarily involved monitoring police activities in black communities, they set forth a 10-point platform or a set of guidelines to the Black Panther Party that stated their ideals and ways of operation that covered social issues such as employment, education, equal housing, healthcare, along with political demands that called for an end to police brutality, fair legal representation, and a right to manifest self-destiny. It was out of this 10-point platform that many of the Black Panther social programs grew.
One of these social programs was a free breakfast program for children. In 1969, the Black Panther Party began serving free hot breakfasts to kids in Oakland. They solicited food from local grocers and even consulted nutritionists on healthy and filling recipes. The Free Breakfast for Children program eventually expanded to 45 cities and fed tens of thousands of kids. Schools and parents praised it, but police and the FBI, as we know, spread rumors that the Black Panther Party was using the meals to indoctrinate and even poison the kids. In 1975, just as the Panthers' breakfast program were being dismantled, the USDA actually authorized a nationwide school breakfast program based on the Black Panthers model.
2 years after the Black Panthers were founded, they opened free medical clinics. The People's Free Medical Clinics, or PFMC, opened its doors in response to the systematic discrimination against blacks in hospitals and private medical practices. The 1965 Medicare and Medicaid Act made it illegal to provide federal funding to any hospital or medical practice that excluded racial and ethnic minorities. However, that regulation was not enforced, and most blacks received subpar medical services from public hospitals and clinics.
These no-cost health clinics opened in 13 cities and offered vaccinations, checkups, cancer screenings, and more. They were set up in storefronts and trailers, and each chapter was responsible for raising funds for its clinic from local businesses, churches, and healthcare professionals. They were staffed by doctors and other trained volunteers.
The Panthers also started a free ambulance service. A black teen in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, died because an ambulance refused to take him to the hospital. And so in response to that, the Panthers converted an old hearse into a free ambulance service for that community.
The Panthers created the first nationwide testing and screening program for sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia was first identified in 1910. This condition attracted little research or funding because it primarily affected people of African descent. The Panthers established a national screening program where they trained volunteers to go door to door in predominantly black neighborhoods to give free finger stick tests. And if anyone tested positive, they arranged follow-up care with the local hospital. This campaign put pressure on President Nixon to sign legislation that funded sickle cell anemia research in clinics in 1972.
The Black Panthers also taught self-defense classes to senior citizens. After a group of older Oakland residents asked them to teach them self-defense to fend off muggers, they launched Seniors Against a Fearful Environment, nicknamed S.A.F.E, or SAFE. The seniors had originally approached the police for help, but were told to just walk close to the curb. The SAFE program also provided free transportation to the bank so older locals could deposit their Social Security and pension checks.
They helped migrant workers organize against Safeway stores in the early 1970s. Cesar Chavez's United Farm Workers Union boycotted Safeway stores in California for selling grapes picked by non-union workers. Initially, Safeway's leadership ignored the union's warnings, but then they were shockingly surprised to witness their alliance with the Black Panther Party, who was the union's strongest ally in Oakland. The Panthers and the Farmers Union regarded each other as similarly oppressed victims of the capitalist ruling class and provided mutually beneficial support. And coincidentally, Safeway was one of the few markets to refuse to donate to the Panthers' free breakfast program. So the Panthers seized the opportunity to help the farmers' workers by providing local free transport to competing supermarkets. The boycott successfully forced the closure of the Oakland Safeway store.
The party also started schools known as Liberation Schools. They launched their Liberation School initiative in 1969, which would eventually give way to the Black Panthers Intercommunal Youth Institute, or IYI, in 1971. And it was an alternative educational institution intended to equip youth with the cultural, political, and analytical resources to understand themselves as local, global subjects in a world undergoing transformation. The curriculum started at age 2.5 because they believed that a child didn't have to be 5 in order to form concepts.
The Panthers modeled the school off of the philosophy of Brazilian educator Paulo Freire, who wrote a book called Pedagogy of the Oppressed. The book explains liberation is praxis, which is the action and reflection of people upon their world in order to transform it. It is not an exercise in intellectual calisthenics, but rather entails the process of cultivating a critical consciousness through education and must begin from the perspective of a person existing in and within the world in which he lives.
Huey Newton took a delegation to China after being invited by the Friendship Association. And in late September 1971, Newton, along with Elaine Brown, the Black Panther Minister of Information, and Robert Bay, who was Newton's personal bodyguard, traveled to China for 10 days to present the People's Petition. This petition called for Chairman Mao Zedong to become the chief negotiator to President Nixon in pursuit of the peace and freedom of the oppressed people of the world. He sought to directly petition Chairman Mao Zedong, but instead was given an audience with Premier Zhao Enlai. Since the U.S. press did not cover this meeting, publicizing it became very important. So the Panthers held a press conference in San Francisco upon their return.
In fact, they covered this event in their own newspaper. That's right. The Black Panthers had a newspaper in their own namesake. Talk about telling your own story and taking control of the narrative. The Black Panther Intercommunal News Service served as the official voice of the Black Panther Party and was first published on April 25, 1967. The newspaper was distributed around the world to discuss the Black Panthers' philosophies and affairs. The paper was also a great source of revenue for the party and helped to support the different chapters and programs.
Most political movements and organizations, they're usually on the government's radar. The government will often attempt to subdue political parties' power. One such response to the Black Panther Party was a radical change in legislation surrounding California's open carry laws. The Mulford Act of 1967 was a bill that repealed the right to open carry in California. So you owe that to the Black Panthers. President Ronald Reagan, who was the governor at that time, signed the law as a response to the members of the Black Panther Party marching into the California State Capitol building with rifles and shotguns. To this day, California has some of the strictest gun laws in America.
The Black Panthers were also a catalyst for other countercultural groups that sprang up in the 1960s. Their most prominent was the White Panther Party. When reporters asked Huey Newton what white allies could do to support the Black Panther Party, he said they could form their own party. So, in 1968, poet and activist John Sinclair and his wife Liddy Sinclair, along with their friend Pun Plumundon, launched the White Panther Party. The White Panther Party was an anti-racist political collective. From a general ideological perspective, Plumundon and Sinclair defined the White Panthers as fighting for a clean planet and freeing political prisoners.
Sinclair and Plumundon were indicted for conspiracy to destroy a CIA branch office. The case brought to light the government's extensive wiretapping of Black Panther members. During the trials of Plumundon and Sinclair, the FBI's counterintelligence program, also called Cointelpro, came under scrutiny. The program started in 1956 And after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., the program focused its attention on stopping the Black Panther Party. The FBI's own documents, which you can easily find online, show that of the 295 direct actions taken against black radical groups, 233 were directed at the Black Panther Party. The FBI had not only been illegally wiretapping the White Panthers, but they had also illegally wiretapped the Black Panther parties, as well as other civil rights leaders and organizations. In a landmark decision known as the Keith case, the Supreme Court ruled that warrantless wiretapping was a violation of the Fourth Amendment.
And how many of you have wondered why the Black Panthers wore the black leather jackets and the black berets, or if there was some sort of meaning behind it? Well, according to Stanley Nelson, director of the documentary The Black Panthers Vanguard of the Revolution, Huey Newton and Bobby Seale chose the Panthers look in part because it was something that everybody had in their closet.
Yeah, because they said, every young black man has a black leather jacket, or can get one, or can borrow one if they can't buy one. And so it was something that everybody had in their closet. Again, this is 1966, so 1967 in that period, and that's how they came up with it. So if you look at some of the pictures, everybody has leather jackets, but they're all slightly different. Some might have a double-breasted black jacket, some might have a black jacket with a zipper, some might have a black jacket that's kind of a suit jacket, leather jacket. But their feeling was, everybody could get a beret, everybody had a black leather jacket, everybody could get some sunglasses and get the Panther look.
The look was intentional in that they wanted to set themselves apart from the respectability politics of the civil rights movement. The Panthers wanted to distinguish themselves from the traditional look of the civil rights movement.
The look was very, very calculated. This was a break from the Martin Luther King and the suits and ties and that kind of, we're going to look proper, which was really, a lot of people don't know that was really part of the traditional civil rights movement, that they dressed up because they wanted to show you the difference between them, all dressed up in suits and ties. The women were encouraged to wear dresses and sometimes little white gloves because they wanted to show you the difference between them and the mobs that would be chasing them or screaming at them. The Panthers, again, were much more urban, and they were after a different crew, and it worked.
They were looking for the young and the radical. They intellectualized and philosophized the approach to civil rights and intertwined it with internationalism in a way that the traditional civil rights movement did not, or perhaps could not at the time. Their uniform looked cool, and everybody, whether they were interested in politics or not, probably wanted to be a Panther just because of the look.
The Black Panthers wanted to unite the disadvantaged groups within the U.S. to oppose capitalism and the U.S. government's expansionism. They tried to use the internal divisions within the U.S. to draw an analogy for understanding the U.S.'s colonizing presence around the world. One of the things that made them such a threat to the U.S. government was how they merged cross-racial organizing with explicit anti-imperialist Marxist politics.
While many organizations and movements have evolved afterward, some with similar names, the Black Panther Party remains the largest revolutionary group started by and for Black Americans. The Panthers had a complicated history, but they were not simply an anti-white or anti-government group. They held fast to the idea that all oppressed people deserve to be unshackled. If we could harness the things that worked for the Black Panthers and implement them today, we could transform the lives of America's oppressed. Well, that's all for today, good people. If you enjoyed this video, please take a moment to give it a thumbs up. We'd love to know your thoughts on the Black Panther Party, so drop us a comment below. If you want to see more of our content, then please subscribe and be sure to smash that notification bell so you can be notified when we upload new content. And as always, thank you so much for stopping by. And for you, all of you adventure seekers, be true to yourself, patient with others, keep your mind sharp, and be the change you want to see in the world.
Peace.
Peace.